So my goal is to make a large triptych that's a 3-panel set, and it usually has a small, large, small kind of ratio to that. And if I remember the particular architectural term, that's a very classic ratio setup. I will add that later in the video or in the description below. Palladian isn't quite right, but maybe Palladian window? Please let me know in the comments if you remember before I remember to add this in the video. Anyhow, I love the triptych set. It's kind of reminiscent of older classical things, and this set I'm designing so that it can be split up, so every panel can stand by itself as a composition, but if you buy it as a whole, you could split it up and show it in different areas. It's easier to transport individually rather than one giant one, but it still has the same impact of a large picture on the wall. So what I've got right now is a 1 foot by 3 foot. So I've got 2 of those panels on the side, and then a 2 foot by 3 foot panel, which I don't normally work that large. It's kind of risky feeling to me, but that's not large compared to some people's paintings. And that's another reason why I go through this process for my riskier paintings. And what I mean by riskier is that there's a lot of problems and compositional issues to work out that I'm going to work out on paper smaller before I add it to the giant canvas. The nice thing about acrylic is that I can still go over it once I'm on the canvas, but the risk is just that I'm wasting paint and time. Now, I like to work from prints a lot, and you run into the same problem with prints with working from a screen or a monitor, is that the color is going to change. This is probably 3 or 4 changes away from seeing it in person. You can also tell that I've got a few different color temperatures going on here just because of the camera. So first of all, I'm not there. The camera sees it. So you're first seeing through the camera's eyes, and there are some cameras that do better at some colors than others. Mine isn't horrible at picking yellows, and I like the golden part. That's often what draws me to a scene. So I have to enhance that in my monitor. That's the second step away from the real thing. You've got your camera that can only pick up so much and can only focus on so much, which is why you either need editing or your eyes, because if you see this really dark area right here and this really bright area, our eyes will readjust just looking through that scene and keeping the exposure kind of even. Imagine looking at a really bright light bulb and then trying to see something dark. The camera can't look at a bright light bulb and then adjust. It's focused on that one area. So the camera already is a step away from our eyes. And then, like I said, there's the monitor. My monitor isn't meant to be a computer monitor, but even the science of the pixels of the screen show color differently than your camera did. So loading that in is another step away from those real colors that you see. Because mine's not a computer monitor, my monitor is cheap and old and has issues, and it actually overexposes some things. It makes things brighter, and I have to know how to compensate when I do prints of things, of what it's going to do to the image. Which brings the third step away is your printer. All printers are also not created equal on even the individual pigments they use, and I know mine has gone downhill. It's a cheap little printer right now. I want to get a laser printer eventually, but it tends to knock out the high contrast. We get some good white here, but when you have this low contrast area right there, my printer doesn't really want to play nice with some of those details. It tends to muddy things just a little bit, but it's a cheaper printer, and I can know how to work with it and enhance it with image editing software to compensate for both the camera, my monitor, and the printer to try to get to what I remember seeing. Yeah, I could have painted, go back and paint like while I was there, but I don't have time for that. So as I'm painting, I'll remember to paint all of these with the same colors. So right now this one's kind of yellowy right here, and I'm going to carry over some of those flowers to this field. These is probably not the same field as this two. So what I've set up, you see this big triangle, so we're almost at the corner of this field right here. I might shift that a little bit. But these two did belong together. There's probably a lot more field right here, but I'm the artist and I can change that. There's gorgeous haystacks way out there. So I'm going to try to make this one stand by itself, and it's going to have the most depth off into the distance of a haystack and trees way out there, and then a lot of poppy field will actually be in shadow. This one is probably the most straightforward horizontal composition that I'll have. This is not their house. This is Pleasant Hill Farm in Fennville, Michigan. I don't believe that's their house, but I absolutely loved these shadows on that little house way in the back. They were so stinking blue, and it gives our eyes something to rest on. I find that a lot of my customers prefer something, a focal point that's man-made, or at least way different. This would make an amazing abstract with just the flowers. It might make an amazing composition, but I want something that will hold this piece by itself, and it needs something like a focal point or to break it up. And you can see on this other printout, this would also make a good shot. This is for a 16:20 ratio. And then you've got this big shadow right here, but this makes a nice little resting place for your eyes when they don't know where to dance around in here. More on the shadows and these big shapes later, maybe? And then in this corner, this is probably a different field, like I said, with totally different bits all in there, and I'm going to work off of these as a reference, mostly for composition, and I have a lot of other prints as well. Now, I also tend to desaturate this. There's a way in the Photoshop to make a layer, turn it all black, and then set the layer styles, layer filter, I forget what it's called, to saturation. So that basically turns it all black, or you can just go into the hues and suck out all the water. Suck out all the color from those. And this is what I get. Now if you squint real hard, these should look identical, because you're forcing less and less color into your eyes. And I like these, especially smaller, little value studies. Value studies are indispensable. If I take an extra half an hour in plein air to do a value study, I can knock out an awesome painting in that much less time because I've gotten used to my subject and I've studied it. When you go down to the pure black and white with these, it's called a notan. That's a Japanese word. I'm learning about the notan, but it's very handy because the strongest black and white shapes you've got are where your eyes are going to zap to the most. That's the psychology of how you're going to read this painting. And that should be a fairly well-known principle for you other artists about contrast. Higher contrast in front, lower contrast where it goes farther away from you, but that's also true of your focal point. What I don't like about this little thing is this is my lightest corner. I kind of want this to be consistent, but I also want this one to stand by itself. So we'll see what happens here. I actually added this little bit of the tree to the background because it didn't have any right there. I know being there that some of that hedge kind of crossed into that, and I want to show that, or else it's going to look like a completely different setting from where this is. And I actually am putting more sky back in here, so I'm really shortening this field right here. There was almost a whole edge that I have left out, but you don't need to know that, don't tell anyone. So these are some of the prints I'm going to work from. My black and white little value study. I did find these poppy fields to be a fascinating study for black and white, and I will show you why. So here's the other one that I had before. Sorry, that's my cat. He likes to climb on things. My studio assistant. So yes, we have this giant shadow right here, and I can choose to leave that there. If you squint real good, that makes a really big hole in the painting. I may choose to leave it out. I'm curious, when you have a shadow without the thing casting the shadow, how does that work for you? Psychologically speaking, in your painting, is that a good thing? Can you just add shadows willy-nilly just to keep it interesting and to break up this big field without having anything cast the shadow? Or do you know if there's something off camera that is making that one? I don't know. I'm going to use it. We'll see. Now, our eyes like yellow. It tends to make yellows and light yellow greens brighter, just physically in our eyeballs. And that's like wavelengths of physics and all of that. It may not technically be brighter, and you'll see that my camera decided not to make it brighter when I did this black and white thing. Those grass things basically disappear. However, this bright pink really lit up really light, and I didn't realize it would do that. That makes a nice contrast right there. So these colors, the blue is probably lighter than I think, and so was the red. You can see most of that completely disappear in here with those mid-tones. And I really think it's the contrast of a painting that is going to carry the grab of the painting. If someone walks by it, what's going to make them turn their head and look at it in the first 30 seconds? And I'm going to put out there that it's the contrast. Something's going to grab them about the values and how you have them in the composition. So this is good to know about how light they need to be in the front. And I love that it's more contrast here than in the back. That's my cat. And then it just mushes out back here, which if you look at the color, though it's so yellow, it seems like it'd be a lighter value to me. I might actually make that a lighter value and push that perspective back. Again, this is just raw material compared to what makes a good painting. Not everything that's a good photograph, not saying this is a good photograph, makes a good painting. And I do love these as well. I'm not sure if I have my little black and white one of that one. But this one, if you were colorblind and you squinted real good, what's going to happen is that a lot of these things are going to disappear. And so I really wanted to know what would happen. And so I desaturated again and found out where the values were. This might be a horrible painting if you were colorblind, like I said, because you've got those values of reds and greens so close. I think it all turns like muddy yellow to people. I think it all depends on physics, etc. But turning this values-wise, even if you were colorblind, you'd still be able to read it with the values again, and the rhythm of the painting is very dotty, and you can't get that unless you have your values separated. So that was a very longish video about how my setup is for this big painting I have and other little ones, and why I print them out, why I do these little, they're not value studies, I actually need to paint this myself to make this a value study, so this is cheating. If you're making a value study, this is not it, but it's a good tool. You can also take pictures with your phone and then desaturate it with the filters. I've seen a lot of plein air artists do that. Doing that of the scene and of your own artwork is really helpful. It's a tool, it is not cheating. And I'll find that if I'm putting my stuff on my Insta, find the link below, that I'll see problems with it that I did not see before because I shrank it, it's a different way of looking at it, or apply a filter otherwise. Okay, that was a long one and a little jumps here and there. Thank you to my studio assistant, Gandalf my cat. He'll make more appearances soon, hopefully. And yeah, hope that helped you. I'm curious on what your process is and how much you look at value and if you look at prints or not, or work off of a screen, which probably is more green, but it's also backlit, and there's different issues with that. So, more to come in this process videos for my big poppy triptych. It's gonna be a big one, and I'm going to frame them individually. Thanks, guys.